Here is how you stop punishing and how you start responding with peace. Keeping your energy flowing needs to matter more than punishing whatever triggered that intense flow of energy to begin with. So we've been programmed and conditioned by society and by those who were in your immediate environment that when you're triggered, immediately punish and lash out, project your emotion and that intense surge of energy onto the child that triggered you, flip out about your bank account balance if looking at that is what triggered you, flip out on something external in this physical world that you believe was the cause of the trigger. That's how we've been programmed by society, movies, TV, parents, family to operate. But see, triggers are gifts and they're helping you heal. Like imagine that there's a bunch of trapped and suppressed energy, right? Within your energy body. And imagine that every single time your child or life triggers you, it's almost like this little red button is pushed. And when it's pushed, it's like the gates open up and allow in that moment, almost like a portal of power. Almost imagine as though when you're triggered, a button is pushed and the floodgates open and a lot of suppressed energy that you may not have fully felt when your grandmother died, energy that you may not have fully felt when your father left, energy that you may not have felt when XYZ happened in your family, or with your breakup, with your first major breakup, energy that you may not have fully felt when you got that divorce, energy that you may not have fully felt and sat with and accepted and allowed to be released healthily, energy that you may not have fully felt all those times that you were bullied in middle school, energy that you may not have fully felt at all those different times in your life. It's like every single time that there's a trigger that you're triggered by your child or life, it's almost as if the gates open and some of that energy gets to come up to be released. But if we keep closing that gate and suppressing it and pushing it back down and not being willing to accept all of ourselves, not being willing to hold space for the whole spectrum of emotion that you as a human being can experience, and if we are still trying to only feel the bliss, the joy, the peace, the happiness, etc., and to not at all feel the shame, the guilt, the rage, etc., then we are going to keep on perpetuating the cycles of projecting that energy onto our children and others, or continuing to suppress it and unconsciously create our relationships in our life from lack, limitation, and from those lower emotions, from those lower levels of consciousness. So one of the key things to remember if you are attempting to experience peace in parenthood long term is that you allowing those gates to stay open and you caring more about that energy flowing needs to matter more than punishing whatever it was that triggered you. That needs to come first. Sitting with and facilitating, staying aware of that energy that's coming up in that moment needs to matter more than yelling at your child or whatever it was that pushed that red button. And at some point, what's going to happen for you watching this video, if it's not already happened at the moment, is that you are going to be there's going to be this sly little smile sometimes, like, because you're going to be like, you're going to look at your child and you're going to be so grateful that they pushed that button. And then what's going to happen is that smile is going to start to appear when life naturally starts to push that button. And at some point, what used to be a very, very uncomfortable moment, at some point that discomfort you would feel when that button was pushed and you were triggered is going to be welcome with open arms and open heart. And you are going to be so grateful to consciously be able to facilitate that portal, if you will, that opening, that allowing of all of that stuff to come up to the surface. And of course I can get into the mechanics of this more in depth, but for the sake of simplicity, it's like, just realize or give yourself permission to remember that when that button is pushed, what needs to matter more is you sitting with and holding space for whatever comes up more than punishing whatever triggered you. Some practical ways to do this is to create an obstacle course in your home where when you're triggered, you walk it to help transmute that energy, to help to stay aware of that emotion, that energy. Stay aware. Staying aware is your heart staying open. Stay aware of it all. Don't get entangled with it. Stay aware as much as you can. Sometimes, depending on where you're at in your journey, staying aware 5 seconds is huge. Staying aware 10 seconds is huge. One day you'll be able to stay aware of that intense surge of energy for 90 seconds or longer. One day you're going to actually be able to stay aware of it until it fully processes and until you just come out on the other side clear. Right? So, when you're triggered, a practical way to apply this is to go walk an obstacle course throughout your house. And as you're walking, you are breaking cycles of projecting the energy onto your child, and you are transmuting and holding space for the energy. Let your children know what's going on. Over the years, I've heard it all. Michelle, my child follows me when I go walk. Okay, at least you're not spanking them or screaming at them or doing the things that you've been saying that you don't want to do in that moment. If they're following you, that doesn't change the fact that you're transmuting the energy and that you're doing something that you've never done before. You're consciously practicing to transmute and hold space for energy. You're being an example to your child of what's possible for them to do when they have to process intense emotion. It's okay if they follow you. Some other common things that I've heard over the years is I can't do that because then my child is going to feel like I'm walking away because of them. Well, communicate. That's why communication is so powerful and is so key in relationships. Let them know before you start this practice that, hey, moving forward, when mom gets a little triggered, I'm going to start practicing to healthily process my emotions instead of project them onto you because I don't want to spank you or scream at you anymore. Anytime you're doing something that helps you to stay regulated and helps you to transmute that energy in a healthy and holistic way, anytime you're doing something that benefits your nervous system and helps you to stay calm, centered, neutral, and at peace, who cares what other people think, you know? Like, Michelle, what about my husband? They're going to think, he's going to think or my wife, they're going to think I'm so weird. They're going to think that you're weird because you're doing something that is beneficial for you and helps you. You got to explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you got to let them in on the secret, which is that you kind of are starting to care about keeping your heart open and responding from a high level of consciousness and high level of emotional intelligence. When they understand that about the one that they love, about you, then they'll be able to accept you for where you're at and what you're attempting to do in your life. But nothing outside of you needs to matter more than your inner peace. So how do you stop punishing and focusing more on responding from peace? Well, holding space for and sitting with the intense energy that comes up when triggered has got to matter a lot more than punishing whatever triggered you. You're still going to be able to communicate with your child after you've processed, but you're going to be able to do it from a higher level of consciousness and emotional intelligence and emotional maturity because you gave yourself that self-love, that self-compassion. You know, you were willing to sit with yourself and to hold space for what you were feeling. A lot of us think that what we really want is to parent peacefully and gently and all of that good stuff. But that's true. But even deeper, a lot of us really are desiring to keep our energy flowing and to not live a life and create relationships and a life from blocked energy. A lot of us are craving is to stay aware. Stop letting thoughts and emotions control our lives.